Welcome back to Good Monsters. My name is Cody Lawrence. I'm your host, and this is the second part of a two-part episode on Steven Furtick and elevation worship. If you have not yet listened to the first episode, I recommend that you do. It's all about Steven Furtick. This episode will be building on top of that. And then return, or if you just want to listen to this one, that's fine too. But again, I highly recommend you listen to the first video. But this video / podcast, wherever you're listening to it, will be about the problems with elevation worship. And if you like elevation, if you dislike elevation, I ask that you keep an open mind, please, and be able to look at the evidence. Something that I have noticed in the past few weeks is some people, maybe I'll make a podcast episode about this too, but some people have this animosity towards anything that comes against the church they go to, or churches they like, or teachers they like. I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day, and I asked him, he grew up in a certain church. And I asked him, hey, what if, and by the way, I'd never been to that church. I don't know anything about the church. But I just asked him, hey, what if I went to that church that you go to a couple of times, and I told you, hey, I don't think the pastor is very solid. I think he teaches unbiblically. And I don't think it's a very good church as a result. How would you respond? I asked him that. And he said, well, I guess I would ask you why you thought that, and I would want to talk about it. And I was like, yes, exactly. Yes, that's what we all should do. But unfortunately, somehow, a lot of people, when you criticize a church that they like or a teacher that they like, people have this animosity. Particularly when it's a bad church or a bad teacher. I don't know. I'm sure my friend here goes to a solid church and he has this response because he is brought up well to respond to people and, try to, if you're interested in truth, then that's the kind of response you're going to have because you're interested in bringing the other person you're talking to the truth. But if you're less interested in the truth, and if you're more interested in how amazing and awesome my preacher is of my church, then you're probably more likely to defend them aggressively and, forget truth, forget scripture, throw all that out the window. This pastor is great. And that's kind of the response I've seen from a number of people in the past. And it's just something I've been thinking about recently. But anyway, keep an open mind, in other words, if you like elevation. And just to let you know, there are some elevation worship songs that I have had wonderful experiences with in the past, but I am not going to be saying nice things about elevation worship in this episode. So just be prepared for that. But again, keep an open mind, look at the facts, and I am open to discussion if you disagree with me on any of these things. So here we go. First, I kind of want to outline the groundwork I laid in the previous episode about quote unquote pastor Steven Furtick. He's not a pastor, but he calls himself a pastor and other people call him a pastor. By his own admission, by the way. So this isn't me saying it, it's him saying it. So here are the points I made as a foundation for the discussion we're going to have today about elevation worship. Here they are. 1, Steven Furtick denies necessary Christian doctrine. 2, he denies Christ's divinity and the Trinity more specifically, which is a really, really big deal. Number 3, he partners with other heretics like T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen. That might be surprising to some people. He has preached at Lakewood Church, at Joel Osteen's church. Number 4, he intentionally misinterprets the Bible, making it about himself instead of what it's actually about. Point 5, he's biblically unqualified for pastoral ministry, and he openly admits it. He even wrote a book about it. You can look it up. And then a bonus point, point 6, which I also talked about in the last episode, is he says his ministry isn't even for Christians. So if you are a Christian, just connect the dots. You shouldn't be listening to his teaching anyway, because he says he doesn't want you to. And if you want evidence or details for any of these points, again, you can listen to my previous episode. I have clips, quotes of him saying these things, and biblical evidence to refute everything he says. Okay, so getting right into it. First, some people draw a distinction between Steven Furtick and elevation worship. Like some people try to say, well, I can dislike Furtick, but I like his music. I don't listen to his teaching, but I really enjoy his music, or elevation worship's music. And because of that, I think attacking elevation worship will probably be a lot more controversial to some people than attacking Steven Furtick himself. And attacking Steven Furtick is very controversial, again, because so many have that kind of that aggressive claws out defensiveness towards his church sometimes. And I bet even more people are going to have that kind of response towards the worship. But the music is good. What's the harm in listening, is what people say. And so let's get into it. The music is good. It's fine, theologically sound music. What's the harm in listening? Well, I will answer the objection that the music is good later. I would disagree that it is theologically sound music, and we will actually be looking at 4 of the most popular current elevation worship songs later in the episode, but I want to lay down the groundwork of why we shouldn't be listening to elevation worship in our churches before we get into the specific songs. So people might say the music is good. What's the harm in listening? Let's just say the music is fine. For the sake of argument, let's just say it's theologically sound music. Mormons can, if the song is vague enough, a Mormon can make a Christian theologically sound worship song, and Christians can sing it. But should we? I don't know. I don't think so. If there's an idea in the Bible of acceptable forms of worship versus unacceptable forms of worship, and so that's a tough one. But just know that you can say it's theologically sound, but think, is it theologically sound because it's vague enough to include theologically sound ideas? That's entirely possible, because a person who is a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness or even a Muslim can make, hypothetically, a song that theologically fits both religions. So just because it seems to fit Christianity doesn't mean that it doesn't fit this other mold instead. Here's another reason why it is harmful to listen to elevation worship, specifically in a church environment. You might have heard of something called CCLI. If you haven't, what you probably have noticed is a little piece of text at the end of worship songs on Sundays up on the screen with a big long number, and it gives the artist and the title of the song and some other information. That is the CCLI number. It stands for the Christian Copyright Licensing International. And you might be asking me, Cody, what are we talking about? What does this have anything to do with elevation worship? I will tell you. Anytime a song is used that is licensed, which is every worship song that your church doesn't write themselves, some money goes to the artist. This means that anytime your church plays an elevation worship song and has on the screen the CCLI number of that song, what you're doing is you're giving elevation worship money. You're giving money to the church, Elevation Church. That means that tithes, money that your church is getting to do their ministry, is being given to Elevation Church. That's what that means. Secondly, what if your church just plays the music and doesn't do the CCLI license? Well, then that's illegal. What if you say, well, my church doesn't donate to Elevation Worship. We just like the music and we play it. Well, if your church plays Elevation music without purchasing a license, then they are doing something illegal and wrong for a church to do. So I think just alone, taking all other arguments aside, except for knowing the kind of teaching that comes out of Elevation, your church has a moral obligation not to play Elevation worship songs because of the ministry it supports. Another reason I think that we shouldn't be playing this in our churches or on Christian radio or necessarily sharing it with our friends without prefacing this with the fact that Elevation Church has bad teaching is because many people who will listen to the music will be pulled into the broader ministry of Elevation Church. What that means is people who really, really like Elevation worship are going to be more likely to believe that Steven Furtick, who is the head pastor of that church, and the church itself is credible. If they don't know anything else about Steven Furtick, like your church, if you play this kind of music in your church is going to be full of people who've probably never, ever heard of Steven Furtick before. But if they listen to that music and they decide to look it up on YouTube and they click a few links, they might end up on Elevation Church's website. They might be linked to some Steven Furtick videos. Never having heard about the guy, never having listened to videos like this, they might be encouraged by the music to listen and accept Steven Furtick's teaching and be less likely to think about it critically. Really. Because by playing the music, your church in a very serious way endorses the teaching of Elevation Church. You're basically saying, this church puts out good stuff, we play their music, it's a good church. So if one of your congregation members who's never heard of Steven Furtick before, maybe they're less discerning, and who does research about every ministry or song that they listen to? Nobody does, and you shouldn't. Your congregation members shouldn't be expected to do that. And so if your answer to this is to say, well, if they stumble upon something bad and they're not discerning, that's not my fault. They need to be responsible for their own actions. You're right, but your church is encouraging it. You are telling them this is an okay thing to do. Steven Furtick must be a good guy. Here's another thing to think about. Elevation worship songs, many of them are written by Steven Furtick himself. He writes a lot of the music. Maybe not all of it, but he either writes many of the songs or he participates in writing many of the songs. So these songs are coming directly from him. And I think I remember something about the Bible saying that a bad tree can't bear good fruit, something like that. And we know Steven Furtick is a bad tree. So some people might say, well, you're right. I disagree with the teaching of Elevation, and I know some of the music isn't so solid, but I like some of it anyway. If I listen to it, I won't get roped into Elevation. I just enjoy the music, and I listen to it on free services where I don't give Elevation any money. Is that okay? So in this case, what's happening is if you do this, you recognize that churches shouldn't be playing the music because it's potentially harmful and it supports this bad ministry. But you also believe that you are discerning enough to pick out the good music and listen to it, or the music that, theologically can fit into actual Christianity, or make of some of the music maybe that some of the music you're listening to is bad, but, just listening to the radio and secular music, that people do that. That's an okay thing to do. And so if the music makes me feel good, or if I like the tune or whatever, then it's okay to listen to, isn't it? That's kind of a weird argument, don't you think? The actual purpose of this music is for people to worship. And honestly, look, this point here, this objection is a really good objection. I think we have the freedom to listen to it ourselves if I personally could see myself having the freedom of listening to Elevation worship songs because I like it. And I do like a couple of their songs a lot, or I used to. But all this stuff is honestly making me think even about those couple of songs that I really, really like. Should I even be listening to them at all? Are there other better ways to get to consume worship music? Probably. I don't know. That's where I personally lean. Now, again, I think the answer to this is I don't know if it's morally wrong to just listen to the music, but I think if you do, you definitely have to be discerning enough not to get pulled into their ministry, and you have to be discerning enough not to let that music change what you believe, because what we do know is that music is vague enough to fit into multiple theological categories. And so that kind of makes me want to say, yeah, I would just avoid the stuff altogether. I would avoid it. It's bad. It's not acceptable worship. It's poisonous. It comes from a broken cistern. So here's another possible objection. I'm trying to give really good arguments against my own point and then answer them, because I know exactly the kinds of things that people are going to say, and hopefully these are good answers to those. And if you are having this conversation with your friends who love elevation, and you have some reservations about it, you can answer their questions in this same way, because I bet these are going to be the kinds of objections that they raise. So here's another objection. But if we just didn't support anything we disagreed with, we wouldn't be able to support anything at all. So the argument goes like this. If we avoided buying things from businesses that did shady things, we would have so few options as to make life really difficult for us. For example, if we only wanted to buy shoes from locally produced, organic, low carbon emissions facilities run by Baptist Christians who exclusively employ Christians and read their Bibles 5 times a day, we would have no shoes. And you're right. That's a point. But I think there's a difference between buying shoes and having your church participate in worship music. The thing I want to focus on is it is not okay for churches to be playing elevation. We have a little bit of wiggle room, I think, in our own lives. Maybe. But I think our churches have no wiggle room at all. We do not want to be giving money to the Elevation Church ministry. And here's why. The difference between buying shoes and supporting this worship music is this. If you, or like a grocery store, for example, so like every grocery store out there, every major grocery store chain is probably going to give money to some, like some leftist or atheistic or anti-Christian charity, like, Planned Parenthood or something like that. And so every time you go to Target, some little tiny incy-wincy bit of your money is going to those charities that have anti-Christian principles. But you also have, you also don't really have other options. If like most grocery stores, I don't know, but if you're so led to try to find a local grocery store, that's probably even better. Support them who are good folks. I'm not saying it's totally morally negligible if you go to grocery stores that support bad things, because I think supporting people who support good things is always better than supporting people who support bad things. But with worship music, the difference is you have more options. It's a lot harder to find a grocery store around you that probably doesn't, or a big grocery store chain that doesn't support something unchristian. But it is very easy to find good Christian worship music from good Christian sources. It's not like the market is so saturated with worship music exactly like this. We have 2,000 years of church history full of beautiful worship music. We even have a book of the Bible totally dedicated to songs that we can sing. And in fact, your church probably has thrown away in the past, if they're updating everything, their psalter that used to sit in the back of the pews so that everybody can sing psalms. So yeah, there is a plethora of worship, and you might say, oh, it's not updated or whatever, like Elevation's really trendy. There are still other modern examples of good worship music that you can listen to. There is. So next, I wanted to review some of the most popular Elevation worship songs. So all of these are either from the most popular songs list on Spotify or from the most popular songs of this year, like most popular worship songs. So I think one of these I got from the top 50 worship songs of 2021, and the other three, and there's an overlap too, I think. So a lot of the songs are on both. But then other songs are just from their most current popular songs list. And the songs I'm going to go over, I tried to pick songs that, a couple that I was familiar with and a couple that I wasn't, because I want to, like, a couple of these I like. I do. I like them. I used to sing them. I used to like them, maybe, let's say. Here are the songs. One is My Testimony. One is Jireh, which happens to be the most popular song at the recording of this podcast episode on Spotify. The third song is Oh Come to the Altar and Do It Again. And I want to analyze the lyrics to these songs and see if they are theologically substantive, and to see if, there are any kind of holes or problems with them, or to see if they're simply so vague that they can fit into multiple theological systems. So here we go. Let's start with the first one, My Testimony. Here are the lyrics. I'll just read some of the lyrics to you. My testimony, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Well, we're off to a really good start, because that's not true. This is a quote from Jesus Christ, not from myself. And so no human being on earth saw Satan fall like lightning. This is not a metaphorical thing. Jesus himself saw Satan fall like lightning. This is Jesus speaking. This is not us. So we're already off to a horrible start in the My Testimony song with the very first line. Here we go. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. Whatever that means. Like God is victorious over things in the world. Like, okay, anytime anything good happens at all, you could say, I saw darkness run for cover. That's so vague. We're off to a terrible start with this song. But I promise I'm not going to be like this for all the songs. I just think this song is off to a horrible, horrible start. I will give a fair shake to all these songs, though. Continuing, but the miracle that I just can't get over. My name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Yes, I do. Still the miracle that I just can't get over. My name is registered in heaven. Yes, my praise belongs to you forever. Okay, so the line, I have resurrection power, this can mean a couple of different things. I've also had conversations with people where, I hear someone preach in a service and I ask questions about it. I might disagree with something. And I give them a quote from the pastor, for example, and they're like, well, he didn't mean that. What he meant was, and if you can do that with your words, if you can communicate one kind of meaning to one person and a totally different meaning to another person, then your preaching is too vague. If one person can interpret one of your words one way and another person can interpret it an opposite way, your words are too vague. So this phrase, resurrection power, for those of you that have ears to hear, this can mean a couple of different things. What it actually means in this word faith movement that Steven Furtick is a part of, they would say, now if you love Steven Furtick, you're going to say, well, that's not what he means. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Maybe that's not what he means. But this phrase, resurrection power, what people often make it mean is, I can do amazing things with my words. I can make stuff happen. I have the power of God. I can do godly things. And they would say, well, because God lives in me. But saying I have resurrection power, can literally mean I have the power to raise the dead if I have enough faith. It's very me-centered. It's not God-centered whatsoever. But what they meant was, okay, you can also say that what they mean is, I am a Christian and I will be raised from the dead. Okay, that's what resurrection power means. So this is a beautiful, wonderful example of this line having two different opposite interpretations. So we're off to a terrible start. I'll continue reading the song. I'm not going to read the whole song, just because, like, hopefully I've helped you determine that this is not a theologically sound song. Some of the songs I think are vague enough to be theologically sound. This one is not, if not only for the first line, I saw Satan fall like lightning. That is not a metaphor. That is a quote from Jesus. No, you did not see Satan fall like lightning. You are not the conqueror. You do not have resurrection power. God does. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ, the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with the blood and washed in water. Sing the graces of the Spirit, Son, and the Father. Our God will finish what he started. Yes, our God will finish what he started. Oh, come on now, every voice, sing this out. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. So this is another example of stuff being me-focused. Look, if you personally, if Cody is dead or alive, God is not done. Now, this is another example of one of those things where somebody could very easily say, well, that what they mean is, it doesn't matter what they mean, it matters what they say. The lyrics to this song says, if I'm not dead, you are not done. This implies, if I am dead, God can do no more work through me. And the critics out there might say, well, yeah, obviously, because you're dead, God can't do any more works through you. But my point is here, God does works regardless of us, regardless of if we follow him, regardless of if we deny him. God is doing work in the world totally separate from us. God does his work through us, but God's work has nothing to do with me whatsoever. It has everything to do with Jesus. And only by his grace am I brought into that. This has nothing to do with me. Okay, moving on to the next song. This is trash. Okay, Jireh. This is the most popular song at the making of this podcast. Here are the lyrics to Jireh. I listened to just a couple minutes of the song because I was curious of how, or like 30 seconds is more like it, because I was curious how they pronounce Jireh. So I'm going to pronounce it the way they pronounce it. Jireh. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I can do to let you down. Doesn't take a trophy to make you proud. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. I read that a few times earlier, and I still don't know what it means. I don't know what this first verse means. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. So that's obvious. Okay, like, fine, sure, maybe, fine, okay. Wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I can do to let you down. Oh, it's a stupid metaphor. I get it. Like, I wasn't holding God up, therefore I can't let God down. I see. But there's a problem with this. Can God be disappointed in us? Absolutely. Does God like it when we sin? No. So yeah, we can in fact let God down. God dislikes sin, and he dislikes it when we sin. So yeah, we can disappoint God. That's bad. Not theologically sound. Going through a storm, yeah, but I won't go down. Another weird line. What if you go through a storm and you die? What if there is metaphorical or literal? People die in hurricanes who are Christians. Terrible, terrible things happen to faithful Christians. This is a theme that goes through a lot of these songs. Like, God is going to work everything out in my life. Everything works out for the good of those who love God, kind of thing. That it doesn't mean that your life is going to be good. And again, people might say, well, that's not what they mean. What they mean is, it doesn't matter what they mean. It matters what they say. Going through a storm, yeah, but I won't go down. You might go down. But if you go down, glory be to God that God still stands. That is what they should be singing. Regardless of me, if I am dead or alive, praise God that He is still working out His plan in the world. We will be raised to new life in His new heavens and new earth. That is something to sing about. The fact that I won't go down in a storm is not something to sing about, because I might go down in a storm. I might. I hear your voice carried into the rhythm of the wind to call me out. Okay, you would cross an ocean so I wouldn't drown. Again, this is the same stuff. God saves me from bad stuff. He might not. He saves your soul, and that's all that matters. He might not save your body. Christians are persecuted. The Christians up in Canada are going to jail for preaching the gospel. Christians are shot by terrorists just for not proclaiming that they do not believe in Jesus. It's terrible. Like, the stuff that happens in the world is awful. And these stooges have the audacity to sing music like this. Oh boy. Jireh, you are enough. Jireh, you are enough, and I will be content in every circumstance. Yeah, well, as long as the circumstance suits my fancy, it seems. Forever enough, always enough, more than enough. Forever enough, always enough, more than enough. I don't want to forget how I feel right now on the mountaintop. I can see so clear what it's all about. Stay by my side when the sun goes down. Why is sun capitalized? S-U-N. Anyway, I don't want to forget how I feel right now. Okay, it's about me. It's about how good I feel. Everything feels good, whatever. Okay, notice that's the most popular song on Spotify right now. Terrible. Next one. Oh, Come to the Altar. This is one of my wife's favorite songs, and as a youth pastor, we personally played this song a lot at summer camps and at our youth group when we wanted to elicit an emotional response from the students. We wanted to call them to some kind of action. So here's what I think. I think "Oh Come to the Altar" is a trap. I think it's a trick. I think a bunch of false teachers got themselves in a room at Elevation one day, and they said, "Hey, let's come up with a song that gets people really emotional." Now, they probably do that with all their songs, because all of their songs are built to make people emotional. But anyway, they said, let's make people so emotional. And in the song, let's call them up to the altar. Like, we want people to raise their hands. We want to be able to count on our clipboard how many people got saved today. So let's make a song that makes people do that. Because God making people come to Him isn't enough. You have to make an emotionally charged song so people do that. You would not believe the number of times we played this song in when I was a youth pastor. It's crazy, like how often I've seen this song played at camps and retreats and that kind of thing, and at other churches even. It's crazy. I think this song is a trap. Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today. There's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Maybe I'm stretching on this one, honestly. I said I would give a fair shake to these songs, but reading through this, it kind of gives me the impression that you have to get up and there takes some kind of action from you to be saved. Salvation is a work of God. It's not a work of us. And I don't know, a couple of things about this song. It seems really tricky and emotionally manipulative, but also it just seems to tell people to, you have to come up and do this to be saved, because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to mark down on our clipboards and share on our social media pages. Okay, next song. That's enough. Do It Again. This is another song that I'm going to end with this song, by the way. This is another song that I love. I loved this song. It has brought tears to my eyes many times. But knowing where this song is from has kind of poisoned it for me. Which isn't a bad thing. I am more discerning now. And I also don't think I've ever read the lyrics until now. And anyway, walking around these walls. Okay, first, this is a reference to Jericho. Steven Furtick and these elevation songs, other songs that I've read, popular songs, reference Jericho. I thought, is this the only Bible story these people know? Man, they love talking about breaking down walls. Anyway, walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall. But you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, you've never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. I could read into this, like this song is vague enough to where it could fit the theological framework of saying, I know God's going to break down these barriers, like in my life. I know that God's going to give me this promotion. I know that God's going to, make my marriage not fall apart. But he might not. He might not. And so there's that I can read into this, but I wanted to end with this song because I loved this song so much. And so if you are a person who loves all of these songs, I am sympathetic to you. I know how you feel. But coming from someone who, like, I raised my hands in worship with these songs, I loved them. Like I said, tears were brought to my eyes because of this music. But it's not theologically sound music. Even if this one song were perfect, and even if it can fit into my theological framework, I don't know that I would spend a lot of time listening to this song in the future. I think I have the freedom to, but these other highly popular songs by Elevation Worship, they're terrible. They're awful, especially the first two we've talked about, Jireh and My Testimony. Not good, not theologically solid at all. Like, it's not even vague enough to be able to fit two theological frameworks. It's terrible. It's terrible. So I hope you're convinced. If you were on board with Elevation, I hope you're convinced that your church has a moral obligation not to play Elevation. In fact, if your church plays Elevation, you have a moral obligation to confront whoever is in charge about these things and see what their beliefs are about it. Hey, are you okay with giving money to Elevation Church? Well, yeah, it's not that bad. Okay, let me have a conversation with you about Steven Furtick and the kind of false teaching that these people preach. The only way that I would see that playing Elevation music is acceptable is before every worship song say, now, hey, this song is by a false teacher, but we're going to play it anyway. And I just want you guys to know that so you don't start liking Steven Furtick. But that's crazy. That's like these stupid churches that play, like secular rock and roll music just because they want to tickle people's ears. It's crazy. So hopefully you, if you are convinced by these arguments, you are better equipped to help your brothers and sisters in Christ to turn away from this stuff and to turn towards real truth, substantive music, and good theology. Thank you for listening to this episode of Good Monsters. I'll catch you next time.